Welcome back. Lawmakers on the House Judiciary Committee now planning to subpoena top FBI officials as they look into allegations of anti-Trump bias at the FBI. Bud Cummins is a former U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Arkansas and a partner at the political consulting firm Avenue Strategies. Good to see you, sir. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Maria.
Well, we can go through one piece of info after the next in the last several weeks that have been uncovered, and it sure smells like this is just a terrible situation going on at the FBI. If we cannot trust our FBI and our Department of Justice to just follow the truth, then we have major problems on our hands for America.
When you're in federal law enforcement, you live on your credibility, and when these revelations are made and they're frankly, outrageous revelations, you lose that credibility, and it's a problem.
So let's go through some of these issues. I mean, the number 3 guy at the Department of Justice, the number 3 guy hires his wife, who works for Fusion GPS. She's hired to do research about Trump colluding with the Russians. At the same time that we know that Hillary Clinton and her Clinton Foundation took $140 million after allowing the sale of 20% of the U.S.'s stockpile of uranium. Some people call that treason. That happened, and yet Bruce Orr's wife is hired, who works for Fusion GPS. They come up with this dossier, which we know is a bunch of garbage, and that's actually the justification for wiretapping the Trump organization?
Yeah, I mean, we find ourselves here, it appears, on the basis of a fraud that was perpetuated on the FBI and the Department of Justice and the United States intelligence agencies to form a predicate based on this fake dossier. And there are people along the chain that knew or should have known where it came from, who paid for it, and how credible it was. But it was used for foreign surveillance. It was used to unmask United States citizens. And then it was formed as the predicate for a special counsel that we are dealing with today, who was staffed with the same people that shepherded all this fake information through the system. So it's very disturbing. And that's an understatement.
Then you've got one of the lead guys at the FBI corresponding with his mistress about how bad and horrible Donald Trump is. And here's what he writes to Lisa Page. This is Mr. Stork to his girlfriend. Lisa Page says, "You might have been meant to stay where you are because you are meant to protect this country from that menace." Peter answers her, "I can protect our country on many levels." So they're talking about an insurance policy here in case Donald Trump is in fact elected president. So what happens? They come back, they see that in fact America voted in Donald Trump, and they decide, we don't like the way this happens, so we're going to change things. We're going to change the course of events. We've got this insurance policy. What is this insurance policy they're talking about, Bud?
The insurance policy is obviously the fake allegations about Russian collusion by the campaign, and the timing of them going back to the conventions is now looking more and more suspicious, and the use of the intelligence services to spy on the opposing campaign. That's the insurance policy. Is we've got an ace in the hole if this thing goes bad. We're working up a smear campaign to take out the president.
Should there be charges brought down here?
You know, if you try to dissect this, a lot of this is just bad management at the FBI, conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest to some degree are personal. I mean, that Agent Strzok knew how he felt about these things, and he should have gone to his superiors and said, this isn't the right investigation for me to be dealing with. But the management at the FBI should have known that McCabe's wife was running for office and was getting big money from the very people they were investigating. I mean, some of these management decisions at FBI are inexplicable. And the good news is they've got a good director in there, Chris Wray. Rod Rosenstein continues to be a guy of integrity. I believe Bob Mueller is a guy of integrity, but he's going to have to prove it. He's going to have to prove it pretty soon, because if he hadn't found anything to support what was the predicate for this investigation, he needs to file a report and tell them there's nothing there and shut it down.
That's exactly right. I mean, how long can this go on without any evidence of collusion with Trump?
That's up to the Deputy Attorney General and Robert Mueller, but I think in light of all these other revelations, which devastates their credibility. They either need to come forward with serious charges that we can examine and independently weigh the validity of, or they need to shut this thing down. They've had 7 months. They've had unlimited resources. If they don't have it now, they're not going to have it, and it needs to be over. You
know what gets me, Bud? I mean, look, we know everybody has opinions. People are citizens. They vote. They have opinions on things. But to line this special investigation, Robert Mueller's investigation, with so many people who are politically charged, with so many people who have political notions about things, many of these people gave money to Hillary Clinton's campaign. So, Weissman or Strzok or, McCabe, they gave money to Hillary Clinton's campaign. Should they be working on this investigation about Donald Trump? I mean, the same people who worked on the investigation of Hillary Clinton were clearly against Donald Trump, and they said so in their texts.
Right. Impartiality is probably a myth. I think judges all have opinions.
Right.
Prosecutors all have opinions.
But they don't actually give money.
Right, and just I feel stronger about some issues than I do others, and it's up to me at the starting point to go to my superior and say, this isn't the right investigation for me. That agent should be out investigating ATM thefts in Hays, Kansas, the rest of his career. But there's larger problems here. About the management and the management decisions that were made, and again, it's breathtaking to think that it could go this far with these partisans and their reliance on the manufactured evidence that the Hillary Clinton campaign and others paid for.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because do we know if the FBI actually paid? The FBI will not answer the question, did you pay Fusion?
Right, and they need to. I mean, they need to go back and really examine what that dossier was used for and who was selling it in the system. Were these partisan agents the ones that were vouching for the credibility of this evidence? We've heard the Democrats back to Watergate during the U.S. attorney's firings lament the politicization of the DOJ. But this isn't only politics. This is the weaponization of partisan politics by arming the partisans with the resources of the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate their opponents.
Right.
This is the worst thing that can possibly happen with justice.
Which is why we're expecting subpoenas on some of these FBI officials next week, because we saw it with the IRS, right? If you can't trust your FBI, your Department of Justice, your IRS, what then? Bud Cummins, good to see you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be watching next week. Stay with us. Back in a moment.